Welcome to Harmony Talk, a podcast about dreamers and doers, individuals from all walks of life, authors, artists, entrepreneurs, inventors who accomplished a long-held dream. They did it, and sometimes it was not easy. This podcast is brought to you by A.M. Skyer, a third-generation family insurance business founded in 1920. And I'm your host today, Lisa Champeau. And my guest is Amy Ferris, who just published a new book called Mighty Gorgeous, a little book about messy love. Amy is an author, a screenwriter, an editor, and a playwright known for championing women. Her last book, Marrying George Clooney, Confessions from a Midlife Crisis, was turned into an off-Broadway play. Welcome, Amy. It's so good to have you here.
Oh, thank you. It's so wonderful to be here.
Your new book, like Marrying George Clooney, is very autobiographical, and it's full of many poignant stories about friends and family. But ultimately, it's really a book about self-love and self-esteem. But you kick it off with an extremely candid confession. If I may quote, "I dropped out of high school, tried suicide, got kicked out of a commune for shaving my legs. I filled myself up with enough drugs to open a pharmacy and slept with a gazillion wrong men whose first names were either Joe or David or I'll call ya." Now, how do you get to self-love and self-esteem from that beginning? Tell us about the journey of your book and why you wanted to share it.
Oh my God. The journey of my book began about 10 years ago, actually, when I started writing posts on Facebook, post-coffee, pre-wine. And they were really more or less to get other people up and out of bed. I was utterly determined to encourage and inspire other women and men, to really use their life, to not be afraid. I had made so many mistakes, so many. And shockingly, there were thousands of people who started to follow me. And I thought, I'm helping people here. They're writing to me, they're messaging me. And so Mighty Gorgeous really began about 10 years ago, born out of Facebook.
Out of the Facebook post. I know a couple of Amyisms have come from there too, like open carrier life, and which is a great comment. But the book is, and I guess the Facebook blog as well, really an exhortation to women to embrace their lives and to be warriors for their own lives. You yourself, you dropped out of high school at age 15 and a half. You did get a GED. One of the funny things you wrote was that when you dropped out of high school, your parents sat Shiva for 2 years.
My mother did, yeah.
How did you discover that you were a writer?
Oh, I always loved writing, always. I think when I was a little girl, my diary became my very best friend. It was where I literally was able to put down every single secret that I had. And the diary had a little key, right? And so I was able to write everything and then lock it. So writing has always been where I knew that I could save my own life.
And so you used it as a tool to kind of move along.
I did.
Somehow all the mistakes and the failures, and some victories too.
A lot of victories.
Right. And you wrote them all down.
I did. And, writing for me was the way that I was able to really come to terms with who I was in the world. It really was. It was the way that I was able to fall in love with my own life because I ultimately read what I wrote and I thought, oh my God, I did that. I accomplished that. I overcame that. I achieved that. And I thought, if somebody else was reading about me, they would go, oh my God, I want to know this woman. So that became, over the last couple of years, the way that I would read my own life. And I think, wow.
Well, there are so many nuggets in this book, as well as in Marrying George Clooney. But I guess your first book was actually a young adult novel. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was years and years ago. I was also hired to write a TV series based on a little short story that I wrote years ago.
But how did you find the writing career? In other words, I understand how you became a writer per se, but make a job of it, make a career. Did you make connections? Did you publish? Did people find you somehow?
I think it was a combination of all of that. People found me. I found them. Ironically, it was the 1988 writer's strike that brought me to feature films. I was on the picket line every day, and there was this other woman, and she and I became friends, and we would go to her office after picketing, and we would write. And we ultimately wrote a movie called Mr. Wonderful, which got bought by, first it was the Samuel Goldwyn Company, then it was Warner Brothers, then Anthony Minghella, who had just done Truly, Madly, Deeply. And everybody was sending him screenplays. And he read Mr. Wonderful and said that he wanted to do it. So it was kind of like, oh my God.
I actually watched that movie.
You did? Oh.
I did, with Matt Dillon and Annabella Shore. Yeah, it was a romantic comedy. And you actually met your husband on the set of that movie, I think. Is that correct?
I did. He was the cameraman.
He was Mr. Wonderful.
Yeah, he still is.
He still is. So you didn't write another movie again for quite a few years.
You know, I got hired to write movies. Then I got hired to write Funny Valentines. And that was pretty extraordinary, working with Julie Dash.
A totally different experience, I'm sure, from Mr. Wonderful.
Oh, 180, completely. They had optioned, Alfred Woodard had optioned the short story by J. California Cooper. And they had hired writers to write it. And the screenplay did not turn out the way that they wanted it to. I had just written a spec script that Universal bought, and they called me up to see if I was available to do it. I never met anybody. I never met Julie. We only talked on the phone. I wrote a screenplay, and they loved it, and it was given a green light. That was it.
And the movie was made. Didn't the screenplay, it was nominated for an award, wasn't it, from BET or?
Yeah, Best Adapted Screenplay. It was, I think, the Black Reel and BET, and I lost, I think, to Spike Lee that year.
That's not so bad.
Not bad at all.
But screenwriting is not your first love, I don't think. It seems to me that your first love is these autobiographical pieces, whether it's the Facebook blog or the two recent books. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, that would be fair. I think writing essays would probably be the best way to put it. I love writing personal stories, but I did love writing dialogue.
Right, which makes sense in screenwriting and certainly in plays. I'd like to talk just for a second about your family, which figures large in both marrying George Clooney. You just made a face, so I'm going to try to go there gently, tenderly, and in Mighty Gorgeous.
Oh, you don't have to be tender.
Okay. When you did drop out of high school and you moved out west, your father said to you, "I can't make your mistakes for you." I know both of your parents have since passed away, and I'm sorry about that. Your father from a heart attack and your mother from dementia, I believe. Did they get to see your success?
Yeah.
And what did they make of it, considering the fact that you dropped out of high school?
Nobody has ever asked me that.
Next book.
My dad died in 99, so he saw Mr. Wonderful. But my dad was always a champion of mine, always. My mother, not so much.
I think you described her once as you always thought she was powerful, but then you realized she was angry, which, by the way, I think many people can relate to.
I did. I thought she was the most powerful person on the planet. And it turned out she was really angry. And that was a big realization for me, to understand the difference between power, real power, and being angry, being bitter. That was huge. That was huge. I think my mother liked the fact that I became successful. I don't think it ever connected to her because of her dementia.
That's kind of sad, actually. But I know your relationship with her was kind of fraught with some issues. But ultimately, at the end, I think maybe you were close.
Well, you know, my mom was really, really complicated, and not unlike a lot of women from her generation. She wanted more out of life, and she was an artist and really talented woman. And she got married, had 2 kids, lived out on Long Island, a real, traditional life from the 50s and 60s. And at the end of my mom's life, and I wrote about it and I have talked about it, I really understood, Lisa, that I had become the woman that she always wanted to be. I really knew that. And there was a moment when my mom said to me, I was visiting her in the assisted living facility, and I was in bed with her. We were watching television, and she turned to me and she said, I never wanted anyone to love you. I always wanted everyone to love me.
What a statement.
Yeah, and she had dementia. And I realized that she knew who I was in that moment. And she was telling the truth in that moment. And I held her and I said that I didn't need her love the way that I did when I was a little girl, that I had a husband and wonderful friends. But I knew in that moment, I knew that that was everything I ever needed to hear. I mean, that was it right there. And it was that night that I really understood that I had become the woman that she always wanted to be.
You have so many, as I said earlier, poignant stories in this book, Mighty Gorgeous. And your mother, of course, really did love your father, though. And one of the stories you tell is how she pawned her jewelry to buy him a pinky ring. So she was happy in that part of her life.
Oh, they loved each other. She loved him. He loved her. I think my mother, in honest truth, was not capable of love, like real unconditional love. I think that she was the youngest of 5, so she was always taken care of, and she was the baby. My father took care of her and loved her. And then, we went through a really rough patch. And she did. She pawned her jewelry and to get him a pinky ring. And now his pinky ring and her pearls live together in my jewelry box. They had a love affair.
And he did go through a really tough time, which you speak about in the book so openly, about how he was arrested and later acquitted on a technicality, but he had to take I guess what you might consider a demeaning job sweeping floors, where the owner bullied him, and you were only 10 years old, and he took you in to Manhattan to that job every Saturday. How did these kinds of experiences inform who you are?
I think they informed me in terms of redemption, in terms of really knowing that your mistakes can become your mission. My father was my hero. I loved him. I think that how it informed me is that you can be really like on the top and then really lose everything, but still maintain your humanity. I always say, Lisa, that we root for the underdog in a movie theater, but we don't often do it in real life. Like when we're in a dark theater, we root these people on. And, we're hoping like Rocky or, any movie that we're sitting there and we're going, I hope you win. I hope you win. But in real life, in sunlight, we don't do that very often.
And in real life, the underdog doesn't always win like Rocky either.
Right. And I think what all of that informed me was to always root for those people. That is so much of who I am. I want everyone to have a shot at life. I want people to feel that no matter what they did, I'm not talking heinous crime. I'm not talking evil. I'm talking like my dad, that people deserve to have another shot. They do. That in and of itself is what can encourage other people.
And this book is very much an encouragement for just that to be done. And you have a lot of other stories in there. Of course, that story with your father had a little extra complication where it turned out the owner who was bullying him had a blue tattoo. He was a Holocaust survivor. I mean, that's a whole other level of understanding and, why he was behaving the way he was. And your book has so many stories like this, but also stories about friends. For example, the acquaintance, I'm going to say, who kind of became more of a friend when you drove him to his cancer treatment. Why don't you just tell us a little bit about that?
Oh, Terry. Ken, my husband, has been friends with them for a really, really long time, Doug and Terry. And they live about 1.5 miles away from me here in Dingman's Ferry. And Terry was diagnosed with cancer. And Doug couldn't take him that day to Newton, where the cancer center is. And he called. And I said, sure, I could do that. I can do that. I can drive him. And that gave me an opportunity to get to know Terry a lot in the car. Even though I knew him, I didn't really know him. but it also gave me the opportunity to witness people who were getting cancer treatment and how they were treating each other and being so kind and so generous with their time, which they probably didn't have very much of. And that little girl who came and helped me with my coffee, I wanted cappuccino and it wasn't foaming. And she came over and she said, "Can I help you?" And here she was, this little girl that had braces and was bald and getting treatment. And what started out as a favor ended up filling me with unbearable, moments, but amazing joy.
You said you kind of realized what hope is, which is, that's an amazing thing to be able to brush up against or to come into contact with hope.
Absolutely. Without a doubt. Incredible.
We're talking about these poignant moments, but the truth of the matter is your books are pretty funny too. And some of your stories are really funny. There's a story, for example, when you're in a department store in the little black dress department and you just got lost there, right? And you got so lost, you actually went to the lost and found department and had them announce over the PA, "Ken Ferris, please come to the lost and found." You wanted your husband to come and find you.
Yeah, my husband. Oh, I didn't know where I was.
Tell me about your husband. Your husband, he's a rock. He's an oak, right?
He is an oak, yeah. He's pretty remarkable. He made a lot of movies. He's a really good man. He's the antithesis of most every guy I had met
right
up to that point.
Joe and David, and I'll call you.
I'll call you. Yeah, not you. And, he's kind and he's audacious and he's bold. He's not fancy at all. He's so down to earth, and we're total opposites, total complete opposites.
Well, you're kind of audacious and bold in your writing, for sure.
I am, but, he's a different bold. He's a different audacious. And we're total opposites. He separates recycling and garbage. I'm the girl that puts everything in one bin. I needed an air conditioner. He was like, imagine the wind coming through the house.
I'm sorry. I shouldn't laugh at that, but I can see it.
Oh, no, but that is a true story. When we were dating and I came out to the house and it must have been like 95 degrees. At that point, this was a real little cabin. It was a hunter's cabin. Ken would come here to garden and I would, be wearing my Barney's New York with, my little kitten slippers. And I went out, he was in the garden, head to toe garden gear. And I said, "We need an air conditioner." And he said, "I want you to imagine air coming through the windows. And I want you to imagine the wind blowing." And I said, "And I want you to imagine being alone the rest of your life." And we got an air conditioner that day, a rolling air conditioner.
Well, there you go. You told another funny story in one of your books about driving, and you told him to slow down. I know so many people, including myself, who's had that conversation. Slow down. I am slowing down.
Oh, I'm so encouraged. I'm so encouraged. Thank you.
How important, though, is it, do you think, to have a partner like him as a writer? He's not the writer. You're the writer. How important is it to have a partner who supports your writing and supports you?
I think everybody deserves that. Whatever they do. I think we all really deserve to have people in our life that support us and encourage us. And, I don't think it matters whether you're a writer or you're a bagger at Weiss. We all need that. We all need those people in our lives.
One of the things you say at the beginning of the book is, what would you tell your younger self? Having published this book and with all of its victories and mistakes and so on and so forth, what would you tell your younger self today?
Do everything you're going to do.
Even date the gazillion bad guys.
Oh my God. A lot of times, and I'm sure you've heard this a million times, people will say, "Oh, I would tell my younger self, don't date that guy," or "Don't do that," or "Don't take that road," or "Don't go to that." And I'm of the belief that I am who I am because of all of that. And I would tell my younger self, when you say, when I grow up, I want to be, I would tell her, you're going to be that woman. Don't not do anything.
I suppose it's just be honest with yourself and who you are and what you want at the time that you're doing it.
You know, we all make wrong turns. We all make mistakes. We all screw up. We all wish we never said or did. But then who would we be?
What's next for Amy?
Oh, what's next? Marrying George Clooney is going to be a play here at the Dingman's Theater in June. We're doing that. And I know this is going to sound a little odd, but I am going to be working with DJ Hurricane, who is really huge in hip hop, and working with him on his memoir. With the 50 years of hip hop, he worked with the Beastie Boys and Run DMC and Jay-Z and really was huge. I'm going to be working with him, co-authoring his book.
What a fun project.
I know.
Thank you, Amy Ferris, for being with us, and good luck on the book, Mighty Gorgeous, a little book about messy love.
Oh, thank you, Lisa.
I'm your host, Lisa Champeau. This podcast is brought to you by AM Skyer, a third-generation family insurance business started in 1920. Have a great day, everybody.